Hawkins-Gaar, everybody.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, hi, good morning. Thank you so much for getting up early to join us here today. So I am so excited to be here. Like Tara mentioned, this is actually my second Creative Mornings talk. I did my first in Atlanta back in 2012. I was 27 years old at the time. I felt way out of my league, and I was so very, very nervous. And to be fair, I am still super nervous, but I'm a little more comfortable on stage than I was 6 years ago. So you guys get the benefit of relatively cool, calm, and collected Katie. So before we dive in, Tara gave a little background, but I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. My first job out of college was CNN. I worked there for 7 years. I bounced around in a couple different departments, but spent most of my time on the iReport team. And it was our job to verify photos, videos, and stories from regular people who happen to experience newsworthy events. I later went on to run iReport, and I managed a team of producers located in Atlanta and London. In 2015, I moved here to St. Pete and joined the Poynter Institute as their digital innovation faculty member. I trained journalists around the country and the world on things like audience engagement, social media, and newsroom culture. I also ran and continue to run the Leadership Academy for Women in Digital Media. It's a highly competitive and transformational program for rising women leaders. And I also wrote a popular newsletter about women in the workplace. And now, after a decade of kicking ass at work, I'm taking a year off. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about where I'm at today. But first, I want to take a step back to that Creative Mornings talk in 2012. So the topic for that talk was art and technology. And I spent the entire time talking about work and how my job fit into that intersection. And the topic, of course, for today is anxiety. And as I was thinking back to 2012 and thinking about today's talk, I realized that that period of my life began the most anxious period I had ever experienced. I was working a very stressful job, living in a big city, and battling daily stress. Over the next few years, the stress and all the anxiety that came with it manifested itself in a lot of different ways. I had constant back and shoulder pain. I had pretty regular panic attacks where my heart would start racing and I would have trouble breathing. I developed some pretty serious jaw pain, and I was having trouble sleeping. All of this anxiety ultimately came to a head in 2014. Things had gotten extra stressful. My boss just left her job, which meant I took on a lot more responsibility at work. The panic attacks kept coming, and my dad passed away pretty unexpectedly at the end of 2013, so I was also dealing with grief. Things were bad. I was eventually prescribed Xanax to manage my anxiety and Zoloft for depression, but still I barely felt like I was keeping afloat. And throughout all of this, my husband Jamie was amazing. He knew how to identify anxiety before it really came on and I had a panic attack. He was great at talking me off the ledge when I felt overwhelmed. He gave me a million reasons to laugh and smile. And he would suggest really sweet things like, honey, why don't you go take a bubble bath while I cook dinner? He was amazing. He was really better for my anxiety than anything else. Jamie and I eventually decided to move to St. Pete for a job I accepted. We figured all the Florida sunshine and slower lifestyle would be great for us, and we were right. Soon after I moved to Florida, I was able to get off of antidepressants altogether. I liked my new job. We bought an awesome house. Jamie got connected to the improv community here. We were meeting new people, and we loved introducing our Atlanta friends to all the charms of St. Pete. We were both a lot happier. Fast forward to 2017, exactly 1 year ago. So Jamie and I had been in St. Pete for 2 years at this point, and life was good. We were planning to start a family. We both liked our jobs, and we made a great group of friends. Life seemed full of promise. And then on February 4th, Jamie died. He was running a half marathon, his second half marathon ever. and he had made it to mile 12 of the 13-mile course when he collapsed and died almost immediately. We later found out that it was due to a rare and undiagnosed heart condition, one that would have been almost impossible to detect beforehand. Jamie was 32 years old, and he was the love of my life. In a lot of ways, it felt like the day that Jamie's life ended was the day that my life ended too. So yeah, this sucks. Are you guys depressed yet? Jamie was awesome, really. You guys would have loved him. And this isn't the point of the talk, but there are a lot of people here who knew Jamie and loved him. And if afterwards you want to hear a story about why he was so amazing or a funny story about him, there are a lot. Please talk to me or any of the people who knew him, because nothing makes me happier than keeping Jamie's memory alive. But here I am. My amazing husband is suddenly, without any warning whatsoever, dead at 32 years old, and I'm left to pick up the pieces and figure out life. So, remember how bad my anxiety got a few years ago? And that Jamie was the person to help me manage it? Now I had more reasons than ever to be anxious and depressed, and the one person who really helped me through it was gone forever. So, what did I do? Well, spoiler alert, I made it through the year. I did it! I'm here! I'm giving a talk. So in a couple of weeks, it will be exactly 1 year since Jamie died. It has been an insanely difficult year, and I know that this next year, when reality really truly starts to sink in, will also be insanely difficult. But I'm incredibly proud to share that through it all, I have managed to find reasons to be hopeful about the future. And miraculously, my anxiety is more manageable than it's ever been. So I'd like to share with you guys some of the things I learned about managing anxiety in the past horrible and humbling year of my life. I sincerely hope that none of you have to go through anything quite like I did, but I do hope that these tips will help you if you ever find yourself in a rough spot. All right, ready? So, number one, the only constant in your life is you. So this is a lesson I obviously had to learn the hard way. Jamie was the one who really helped manage my anxiety. He was also, for the 8 years that we were married, my source of major happiness and fulfillment and purpose, and a lot of self-worth. And after he died, I had to figure out how to love myself the way that Jamie loved me. I also had to learn how to be kind to myself and patient with myself, which is really hard. If you're anything like me, you know that this is hard work, but it's really important. I'd put so much of my own happiness on Jamie's shoulders, which wasn't fair to him and wasn't fair to me. In this past year, I've had to get a lot more comfortable with alone time and enjoying my own company. If this is something you need to work on, you can start by doing this by spending a day or evening alone. Go to the movies on your own or take yourself out on a date. And this is important, stay off of social media. It's really important. Just leave your phone at home. It might feel lonely or awkward at first, I know, but really try and take note of the moments where you feel truly content. And once you get comfortable with that amount of time, you can grow from there. You might even eventually want to do something like solo traveling, which can be an amazing experience. I know that this is hard. This is something that I'm still working on, but it can be such a gift to feel truly content in your own company. Number two, asking for help is awesome. So one of the very few silver linings of grief is that there's a lot of help at the start. There are so many people around to feed you, listen to you, cry with you, clean your house, really help in whatever way they possibly can. And after Jamie died, I was struck by how many people wanted to help, but more importantly, how happy people were when I gave them something to do. And I tried to remember this as the year went on, and I've honestly gotten really good at asking for help in the past year. For example, grocery shopping now is just one of those things that makes me cry. It just hits me in the feels. I don't know why, if it's the music or what, but it always makes me cry now. And so I've just started asking friends if I could go along on their shopping trips or they can pick up something for me at the store. Grocery shopping with friends is actually really fun, so I would recommend that. Another example, just yesterday, I was freaking out. I was feeling very anxious about this talk on anxiety. And I went to a Facebook group that I'm a member of called the Hot Young Widows Club. It is, it is an awesome Facebook group that none of us want to be a member of. And I asked them for advice and some reassurance on this talk, and I got a ton, and I felt a lot better. I was really, really glad I asked for help. When we get stuck in our own minds, it is easy to spiral, and it feels sort of natural to want to isolate. But if I've learned anything in this past year, you have to fight that early on and reach out for help. Tell friends when you're feeling overly anxious or depressed or even just too stressed out, and give them a few ways that they can help lift that burden. Your friends want to help you, I promise you. They just need to know what's going on, and they need a little direction. Number 3, therapy helps. So I'm honestly not sure where I'd be without my therapist. Once a week, she comes to my house, and we talk for an hour. That's a thing. Like, therapists do house visits, which is amazing and so great. Highly recommend it. And during that hour, I dump out all the things that have been weighing me down, and I feel a hell of a lot better afterwards. Figuring out where to start with therapy can be really overwhelming, I know. I found my therapist through my workplace's Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. EAPs generally offer free short-term counseling. In my case, it was 6 free sessions. So if you have been thinking about therapy, but you're not sure where to start, I would suggest checking out if your workplace has an EAP program. And if it doesn't, there are a couple other easy and affordable options. There's Talkspace, which offers affordable online therapy. And then also a lot of therapists offer sliding scales, so they're willing to work with how much you can afford. Truly, I cannot recommend therapy enough. I cannot recommend recommending therapy enough. There is still a huge stigma around mental illness in our society, and the more we talk about healthy treatments, the better we'll all be. Number 4, creativity helps. So we're here at Creative Mornings, and not coincidentally, I have found that creativity is one of the best things you can do to soothe an anxious brain. For me, there were 2 creative outlets that really helped. First, I found a lot of solace in writing. Writing helped me to kind of process all the crazy things that were going through my brain. And in fact, last year I wrote more than I've written in my entire life. It also helped me to articulate everything I was going through and share that with family and friends who were worried about me and wanted updates on how I was doing. The other thing that helped me was crafting. My friend Josie and I met so many times last year, and we made tons of colorful coasters and greeting cards, like so many. Like if any of you need coasters or greeting cards, come see us afterwards, because we have a lot. But the end result of what we made wasn't nearly as important as the act of making. There's something so magical about getting engrossed in a creative task for a few hours and just turning off your brain and all of its chatter, achieving flow. That's like a really amazing thing. So whether it's crafting or coloring or music or cooking or whatever makes your brain happy, I highly recommend taking at least one night a week to just do that creative task and kind of turn off your brain and allow yourself to recharge. You'll feel amazing the next day. Number 5. Whoops! How did this like in here? This is true for me, but we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, number 6. Be mindful of what works for you. So Jamie knew what would make me feel better when I was anxious, but I wasn't particularly good at figuring out those things on my own. And now, because I was forced to figure out those things a year later, I know exactly what's going to help my anxious brain. Some of the things that work for me are long walks and bubble baths and spending time with my dog and crafting and talking on the phone and drinking water. That is so simple, but I always feel better after I drink a glass of water. It might seem silly, but keeping a list of the things that make you feel better is really important. And then when things get bad, when the anxiety ramps up and you're starting to spiral, you can refer to that list and choose one simple thing to make yourself feel better. Something I've been doing lately is asking myself, what will make me feel better right now? In moments when I start to freak out and get really depressed, instead of focusing on why I'm so sad or when in the world I'll possibly feel better, I just ask myself, what's going to help right in this moment? It's usually something as simple as throwing my phone across the room and getting the hell off Facebook or drinking that magical glass of water. But just asking myself that question has stopped me from having some major freakouts and helped me to adopt some healthier habits. Number 7, take things minute by minute. Speaking of healthy habits, research shows that it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's the word I was looking for. 21 days, that's a really long time. So if you're out here and you're listening to me talk and you're thinking, this is great, I'm going to set aside a day for creativity, and I'm going to take myself out on a date, and I'm going to write a list of all the self-care things I'm going to do, that is awesome. I'm glad that I inspired you. That's excellent. But please give yourself a lot of time and space and be patient. It's going to feel awkward at first, and it's going to take a while before these things feel natural. Whenever things became overwhelming for me in the past year, which was pretty much all the time, I reminded myself to take things minute by minute. I actually have this written on a whiteboard in my kitchen, and I've had that up all year. I tried to stay in the moment, like Patrick said, not worry too much about the future or get stuck in the past. It was honestly like the only way for me to stay sane. And I think this applies to all of us, though. The only thing we can control is what we do in this very moment, so we might as well stay in the present. Unfortunately, you're not going to fix your anxiety overnight, just like I'm not going to magically zoom through my grief. But if you try to rush it, guess what? You're probably going to wind up feeling more anxious, so you have to be patient with yourself. Next, there's comfort and discomfort. So it's worth mentioning that sometimes anxiety can actually be a really good thing. It would be weird if I hadn't felt anxious ahead of this talk, or if I don't feel super nervous when I think about taking a year off of work. In both cases, anxiety pushed me to be better. It pushed me to practice this speech over and over and over, so I did a good job today. And it pushed me to write a bunch of goals and kind of map out my year, so I didn't waste this valuable opportunity of time off. So I'm going to make a confession. One of the things I was most anxious about today, the thing that I was most nervous about, was that I had to do this alone, and that I didn't have my #1 fan in the crowd. Back in 2012, when I gave my Creative Mornings talk, Jamie was right there in the front row cheering me on. And afterwards, we went out to lunch, and we had beers, and we talked about how great it was, and it was just a really fun day. I remember it very fondly. And today, I have friends here, which is awesome. Thank you guys for coming. But they're normal people, and they have to go to work after this. And like, I drove here alone, and I'm eventually going to go home alone. And that is still really hard for me. It's a really hard thing for me to face. But the fact that I had to do this talk today and do it alone was not a good enough reason to not do this talk. It's cliche to say, but amazing things happen outside of our comfort zones. So you have to not let fear and anxiety get in the way of those amazing opportunities. And last but not least, you can do this, I promise. So if you ever told me that I could not only survive Jamie's death, but that I would learn how to be kinder to myself and manage my anxiety in the process, I would never believe you, not in a million years. But I'm here, and I'm doing it. Suffering from anxiety can be awful, but it's something that a lot of us face. I think there are probably more people here in this room that are fighting their own battles with anxiety and depression than you'd even realize. That's why I was so grateful to get to do this. I hope that some of this advice helps. But it's important to note that these are things that work for me. There's unfortunately no one-size-fits-all approach to becoming a less anxious person. But you can absolutely start to identify what works for you. I by no means have this all figured out. I still struggle with anxiety all the time. There's still days where the crushing reality of Jamie's death means that I'm going to have trouble getting out of bed or may not get out of bed at all. But those days are thankfully fewer and farther between. And most importantly, I'm not suffering from that jaw pain and those constant panic attacks. All of that has gotten so much better. I'm proud of myself, and I know that Jamie would be proud of me too. I've made it through the past year by being mindful of my anxiety and purposeful in how I treat myself. And I know that no matter what you're going through, you can get through this too. So please be kind to yourself, friends. In the end, you're the only person who will always be there. Thank you.
I was like definitely like crying that whole time. I was like in the front, and Christina was like videotaping me the whole time. Thank you so much for sharing that and being so honest with us. That was amazing. When Katie and I met to talk about this, we were at room 901 and we had like this great date. And she was like very put together and professional, and I was just like sobbing like the whole time. And she was like, yeah, it's weird, you know, I'm just, you know, I'm doing it, it's fine. And she's like just talking about herself so calm. I'm just like, okay, are you sure you're okay with this? And like, it was awesome bonding.
It was.
I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you.
So I want you to tell people about the prints. So we're going to do a Q&A in a few minutes, but these prints that Mike made for us, just tell them a little bit about them.
So you might not have seen them. They're on the table at the front. Be sure to get these. So right after Jamie died, I kept discovering things that felt like little gifts for me. And one was a journal that he kept in his first few months of living here in St. Pete. And there's some amazing observations about St. Pete. He really likes St. Pete, so that's great. But the other was a list of tips and observations that he wrote about writing. And this was right as I discovered that writing was super helpful. And there are things like, discomfort is normal and rewarding. There's another, writing begets more writing. It's just fucking true. Like, he just wrote these tips for himself. And you had the great idea of turning these into postcards you guys can take. So take these, they're awesome, and they're just great reminders. So thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do Q&A. Who has a question or a comment or just wants to like invite Katie to lunch and give her lots of hugs? I think I speak for all of us when I say we can go to lunch later.
Yeah, I've got a year off. I have so much time for lunches.
We all go through a lot in the course of life. And as you move on and get to be an old person, you know that you've gone through so much, so that you face life. Of course, you get shocked by things, but you have that backlog, so you certainly have a lot of it now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know how you didn't cry.
A lot of us are wondering that. I'm like over here snotting. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, Katie. Could you tell us about your dog?
Yeah, I actually, I was thinking about it this morning, and I actually threw in the thing that spending time with my dog has been helpful, but I felt really bad because honestly, like, Henry Barfight is my dog's name, and Henry deserves more shout-outs for getting me through my grief in the past year. Like, my friends are okay, but Henry is awesome. Yeah, he's great. He just turned 11, but he's healthy, which is good. I like tell him every morning he's not allowed to die, so he's good. Yeah, he's an awesome guy, and walks are amazing. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one more from back here.
Where are you at in your year off? Like, when did it start?
I'm like
and where's
3
your
weeks
deadline?
in. I started, it was like January 1st, my first day, so I'm getting used to it. I think I'm gonna spend the year, so I guess I'll tell all you guys, I feel like if I say it out loud, it will happen, but I wanna write a book one day. So, I have a lot of writing, but it's all like, if it was like sheets of paper, I would just be surrounded by a lot of like junky sheets of paper that don't make a whole lot of sense, but I feel like in this year I'll start to make sense of it. So I want to do that. I want to do a lot of traveling. And I want to just try to be patient with myself, which is really hard. Coming up on the year anniversary of Jamie's death, like, I've really struggled with like, but what did I accomplish in the past year? Like, for whatever reason, just the fact of surviving like doesn't seem good enough. I'm like, but my life, whatever, like, it's hard. It was really hard when this new year hit, and I was like, I don't have a job, I don't have a husband, I don't have the family we thought we were gonna have, all these things. That was like really difficult for me, but I am trying, like I said, and it's still a work in progress, to be patient and to be kinder to myself. And yeah, maybe we'll all see each other in a year and I can tell you how I'm doing after my year off. Thank you guys so much.